You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by NASDAQ. From its inception, NASDAQ has been an innovator and agent of change in the financial markets. It's in our DNA. From the development of electronic trading to our drive to bring enhanced functionality and world-leading technology to our suite of 6 options exchanges, we aim to exemplify customer focus, consistent technology, and streamlined solutions. In 2019, NASDAQ proudly launched the NASDAQ 100 Volatility Index, ticker symbol VOLQ, to its suite of exchange indexes. The VOLQ index uses only at-the-money options, offering the investment world a measure of volatility that directly points to the NASDAQ 100. Since then, CME launched VOLQ Futures, VLQ, and we've launched NASDAQ 100 Volatility Index Options, ticker symbol VOLQ, which are AM-settled index options on the VLOQ index that provide investors with a new way to gauge forward-looking equity market swings. Learn more about these exciting new volatility products at www.nasdaq.com/VLOQ. You can find more on NASDAQ's full suite of index options products at www.nasdaq-100-options-XND-NQX-NDX-VOLQ. NASDAQ, leading the U.S. options market and continually rewriting tomorrow. And now it's time for a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back here on the old network one final time from the Southern studio, at least for you folks on the on-demand side. Pro folks will have a show coming up after this. But for you on-demand folks, welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the ever-exciting, at least we tend to think so, Options Insider Radio Network. If I sound a little bit different as I adjust my mic here in the old Southern studio, listeners, it's because I still am, there we go, because I still am in the old Southern studio, at least for a few more shows down here. If you hear some thunder overhead while I'm talking, it's because it seems like one of those unexpected southern storms is swooping into the area. So hopefully we will be able to maintain connectivity throughout the full show out there. You never know with these crazy storms. So if you hear explosions in the distance, I'm not in a war zone. It's just the Southern studio saying hello to all the folks out there. Of course, if you want to say hello to a little bit more content yourselves, only one place to go, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go out there. Once you're there, you'll get 200. We just hit Options Oddities 100 recently. I just realized that the other day. We should have had a big celebration, but we were busy. I was traveling. Maybe we'll have to have a belated celebration out there. But over 100 episodes of Options Oddities alone. And then 100 plus pro Q&As, a whole bunch of other goodies snuck in there. Of course, you get an early access to a lot of great stuff that everyone else has to wait for on the network. Lots of fun, live access to this, everything else we do. And of course, get your name in the hat for the Pro Trading Crate. Congratulations to Mackenzie, our resident crypto aficionado, who won now her second Pro Trading Crate. So folks starting to get into round two. I love all of our long-standing members who've been around for a while, been able to play the game for many months out there. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go if you too want to join the party over there. Let's see who's joining us for the party on the show today. I am pleased to welcome back from usually the dark and stormy. I think he sent his dark, stormy weather down here instead, shores of Maine, where we are joined once again by the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. Mr. G, welcome back to ye old volatility views, sir.
It appears the tables have turned. You're on the dark and stormy shores of Florida, and I am in the clear, sunny, breezy, and warm, perfect environs of a Maine summer.
So I guess for coming back to the East Coast, right? They welcome me with open arms and torrential downpours. So we shall see. We shall see how the show progresses, listeners, as we keep on rolling right on into the volatility review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol Review, the portion of the show where we dive into all the Vol that was trading and trending and unusual activity and analysis, all sorts of fun perspectives coming in on the show. And, you know, as the thunder just rolls overhead, appropriate to some degree out here for the show this week. As we're coming into the start of the show, we are seeing the markets and that proverbial worm starting to turn, listeners. Earlier in the show, in fact, earlier in the session, not that long before showtime, listeners, we were hanging out in mixed to red in a lot of the major indices out there. Now that the day has progressed, in fact, we threatened, we bounced off of it. We threatened to break 4,400 again. We got down to 4,403. And then since then, the worm has turned. Everyone and their mother and their uncle has to buy themselves a little bit of the old S&P because we are threatening not quite 44.5, we're pretty darn close, 44.40 right now, rallying about 2/3% in the S&P. The Dow up about 1/3%. The Dow was a laggard earlier in the morning. It was red on the day. It has now swung to the green. And NASDAQ up nearly a full percentage point, about 0.85% out there. So apparently the worm has turned. All is right with the world yet again. Coming off the heels of a day yesterday where we saw the opposite. A lot of red on the screen. We saw vol actually managing to catch a bid, which was refreshing to see out there, especially after the persistent drumbeat of last year, whereas what is going on with VIX? Is VIX broken? Is vol broken? What's the point of VIX? It never moves. And now here we are, listeners. Once VIX gets back into the teens, you can start seeing it start to do its thing again, which is always fun. And I'm sure for a lot of you who are newer to the world of options and volatility, it might be a little surprising and or refreshing to see this out there. Coming into the start of the show today, we have VIX at a 14.5. So a nice little pop here from where we were this time last week. Still up 1.5 points. Of course, if this rally continues and if this thunder overhead persists, we might see some of that vol bid vanish. Even by the end of the show, we could be back at a 13 handle. Of course, still a decent distance from that 12 handle that I lamented on the show not too long ago. We did kiss ever so briefly, listeners. We did kiss a 17 handle early yesterday. Actually, we got up to, I think it was like a 17.08 was the high that VIX Cash hit during the week. Of course, coming back off that now, but still refreshing to see what is effectively a 5-point swing over the course of the week. Kind of nice to see that again, to know that VIX can get up to its old tricks again. VVIX 94, up about 11 points from where we were this time last week. last week, of course, we were heading into what was effectively a truncated holiday weekend, or I should say holiday trading week. And so we saw vol coming out last week as well. So last week, a bit of an outlier. And then, of course, VOLQ 1830 up, not quite a full point, about 0.8 of a point from where it was this time last week. Mr. Rock Lobster, an interesting week, a weird week. We kissed 17 ever so briefly. I think we all knew that wasn't going to last, and that was the case. This past week, Mr. Rock Lobster, a very literal example of how if you have some VIX upside, you got to get the heck out of Dodge pretty quick. Was that your takeaway this week as well, sir?
It was. Like, I sold, oh my gosh. I sold basically everything I had in July upside and the zero left. And I sold, I didn't sell any of my August though. It kind of got back to a decent price. I'm like, I just couldn't do it. Which of course today, like, the high call price high is like 290, and today they're trading below 2. So of course selling them would have been a lot smarter. But I did buy a couple of VIX puts, so I don't feel so bad. But it's always better to get rid of stuff. I just thought, like, we're not going to have one more pop between now and August. So yeah. So anyway, yes, all the July I got rid of. Generally, my general rule with VIX is, like, you get that pop. If you hit 20, you generally hit it twice. Again, these are just observations. If you do have a move and the whole vol curve doesn't actually move all up at once, you just get basically the front end moving. That's usually like, okay, we're having a little vol, but we really don't have a vol event. We basically just, the market's moving, but it's not really big. And we never really got super flat. We got a little flatter in the front, but short-term vol, like 9-day vol, never got over 14 or 15. So it's not like, how low is the market going if 9-day VIX it can't get over 15? Like, it's not going anywhere. So, anyway, that's kind of where I was on that.
Aside from the vanishing upside, sir, anything else catching your eye out there in this wild week where, kind of refreshing to see VIX doing its thing a little bit again, sir?
Oh yeah. I mean, well, that's kind of the fun of VIX. Like, once it's down to around 13 again, all the percentage moves are huge. You get like a 3-point pop. And that's like what, 20, but look what the futures do. The price of the futures could move 1.5, 2 points. And that translates to, 15, 16, 17%, almost 20% in like VXX. So you get, the lower VIX goes, a 1 point, 2 point, 3 point move on the upside is like relatively pretty big. And that's what makes it fun. It also means if you don't get continuation, you gotta take your money. Like, it didn't thrill me. So I owned a lot of upside for nothing because I sold a bunch of my 16 and 17 puts out last week when they actually were printing pretty decent money. And I made some money on the strangles, just not great money on the strangles. Because I was only like I own the 22-30 call spreads for probably 20 cents each, and I sold the calls for 40. So not great money, but I'm not going to complain because it was still, it's positive, non-correlated money. So I'm not going to get super upset. But if you don't get continuation, usually I close. Like, you get around 17, you start kissing the top of zone 2, and it doesn't really break into zone 3. You're like, it's not enough, and you got to just take what you can get and go on to the next thing. And I spent years holding on to watching it get like kind of, you make that run through zone 2, like, woohoo, this is the big one, Elizabeth. And then no. And you're like, okay, 17, 16, 15, 14, boom, 13 again. So you have to kind of take it when they give it to you. So, and right now we're dropping back into what I would call as like a kind of a normal contango. It is not, it's actually still a little light. It wouldn't surprise me to see VIX a little lower. So it's like, it's almost back to being like dead fair. And when I mean dead fair, when we're in contango, like historic forward vol averages. That's all it is. So we're like pennies away from it right now. So it's kind of it's starting to look like what could be a more normal type of stock market, even with all these other, issues going on in the background.
Yeah, I was just looking at a VIX chart while you were talking. And of course, this time a year ago, VIX was at 27, vol was in triple digits and everyone was wringing their hands. Oh, VIX is garbage. VIX is broken. What's the point of it? Shortly thereafter, it was about August of last year where we started kissing the teens again. And that's when people started maybe getting a little bit more excited out there. But still, yes, that persistent drumbeat is VIX broken. I think, as you mentioned on the show a year ago, but then obviously there's still a question mark around the impact of 0 day. But I think we all also came down on the fact that at the end of the day, VIX was just, when it's hanging out close to 30 for sustained periods of time, there's just not much you can expect out of it in terms of how much more upside you can get. But now that we're back down to a somewhat more, dare I say it, normal range, then you could see some actual moves. And for all those out there who love it so much when we say it, percent of percent moves out there as well. That's for the meatball, wherever he is out there this week. I know how much he loves vol, a percent of a percent. You mentioned the curve, listeners, or Mr. Rock Lobster. Let's get out there next, getting out to the old volatility surface, listeners. As the old Rock Lobster mentioned, we are kind of getting back to somewhat normal, somewhat healthy contango out there. If we get all the way out to the end of Q1 of next year, March of next year, we're about a 21 in that VIX futures term structure, the cash hanging out at a 14.5. Of course, that front July future when we kicked off the show at about a 15.60. So a pretty decent slope all the way out there to March. And of course, that puts that July future up close to 3/4 of a point from where it was this time last week. August kind of barely budging up about 1/4 of a point. Mr. Rock Lobster, you were just talking about the contango creeping back in. What is catching your eye out there in the world of the vol futures this week, sir?
This is like I was saying, this is the most normal, average-looking vol curve we have had in probably 3 years. It's very looking historically average-esque, which is kind of funny. So you have things kind of getting back to more historic levels. And generally, like, those more historic levels are bearish VIX. Like 9-day vol is 1260. VVIX is now down below 100 again after just being above it for about 2 seconds on Thursday. July 1570, which is still, I think the July future is still a $0.50 above its lows recently. So, but it is below 16. So it's slowly kind of creeping down. August future 1677. And I think the biggest thing now is we're waiting for tech earnings. I mean, you got all these $3 trillion companies expecting some pretty big AI numbers. Like, so what, what's it going to be? So there might be a little bit of, I don't know. I think it's going to be a hard time for VIX getting anywhere below 13, at least until some of these guys report. So I just think that's where things kind of are price-wise.
Well, speaking of where things are, it's also that time of the month, listeners. We got the numbers hot off the presses from our friends over there at OCC. We broke them down in more detail on Options Bootcamp this week because they came out right during that show. I won't get into all of the highlights here. Suffice it to say, June, another not quite record month, but pretty darn close to it. 962.6 million contracts cleared by OCC in June. That's up nearly 20% from this time last year. So that's quite a banger month. June, historically, not really a banger month. I mean, it's the start of summer. Usually that whole sell in May and go away trade is in full effect by June. So you don't see a ton of volume. But this year, putting the lie to that, index options up over 38% year over year. I wonder why that could possibly be. What could possibly be driving the spike in volume in index options, listeners? I have no idea. Equity options up 23%. But the interesting nugget, because we're talking about futures, that caught my eye here is usually this is where I tell you, the VIX futures were still a laggard. They were terrible. This time, VIX futures kind of treading water, which in the parlance of VIX futures is actually a bit of a win. They were only down 2.2% on the year. A year ago, VIX futures put up 4.25 million contracts. This year, 4.158. So still down, but down much less than they have been in the past. So there you go, Mr. Rock Lobster. Perhaps a ray of sunshine for all the VIX futures traders out there, that even though the SVIX and, the new incarnations of these vol ETPs, they haven't really delivered on the VIX futures volume. It seems like a little bit of this uncertainty we're seeing out there in the market is managing to keep VIX futures, at least from a volume perspective, kind of treading water, sir.
Well, really to see VIX futures like action when VIX has some action, when it just sits there and just sort of slowly declines for the whole year, that's usually kind of a, the reality is options and futures lovable. I guess I'm adding to my I have a corollary. Options lovable market, and futures really lovable market. So for VIX, the bull market is up. So unless you get like that action we had in March, who's making money trading VIX futures like in the month of June when like pretty much the whole, you look at the contract just kind of went south and just never really picked up any steam at all. I'm just looking at VIX in the month of June. Let's see the last 30 days. It started the month at a 1409, pretty much stayed glued to it for a month, and we had one day where it shot to 17. That was your shot to get rid of a July future, and that was it. So there's just, there was like the variation in June. We for 28 out of the 30 days in June, roughly, actually, because I'm looking at July now, but there was, VIX really didn't vary more than $1 from 1390 the whole month. So it's just hard for, it's hard for traders to get excited when there's no real move. What are you buying into? And then if you trade VIX futures, just for the contango? So you short them and, make a little juice that way without spreading them. So generally, if there's not great value or the future prices don't get all kind of out of whack, I don't think you see a ton of volume. But I'm happy to see more volume come into it, but you definitely need you need that action. So your chart just shows you have 1.26 million contracts on a day when we're up 5 points, or like 4 point. We had almost 4 point rally in VIX, and then by the next day, all the volume has dropped again. So, but it's good that we had that we had the volume, but you need action. You need some action for people to buy into it.
You need action indeed. Look at the action in our chat. We got Nichols saying the storms can't stop volatility views. You are correct, sir. Neither rain nor sleet nor torrential downpour will keep us from our appointed volatility rounds. As I say that, watch the weather just knock us off the internet. That's the one thing that could stop us. But outside of that, we're going to keep on trudging along. VIX options kind of trudging along on this truncated holiday week. As we're talking right now, coming into halfway through the show, listeners, it's a respectable day out there. It's not nothing. It's not barely 250,000 contracts, but it's also not 1.2 million contracts either. Looking at 438,000 contracts on the tape in VIX land right now. That ADV also just getting gut punched by the holiday week, listeners. Down 50,000 contracts from where it was this time last week. So back below 800K, down to 759,000 contracts. Of course, we see a few more days like yesterday back on the radar. That's probably going to change. Let's get out to the top 10. Let's see what's open out for size right now in VIX land, listeners. And it's an interesting smattering, let's put it that way. Of course, if you're looking for some puts, you look elsewhere, because once again, third, fourth week in a row now, we have 0 puts to be found in the top 10 size positions in VIX options. Read into that what you will, listeners. Cost you 196,000 contracts to break into the top 10 this week. That gets you to the SEP 45 calls. So Are we getting back into that season, listeners? The answer is not really, not quite. A little bit. Got a taste of it, though. Number 9, 215,000 of the July 21, so far more, dare I say it, normal strike selection there. Number 8, 228,000 of the July 25s. Number 7, 240,000 of the AUG 20s. Number 6, we have 243,000 of the AUG 25s. Number 5, 257,000 of the AUG 60s, 60s, so still some love for the 60s out there. Number 4, 284,000 of the July 23s. Number 3, 286,000 of the July 22s. Number 2, 317,000 of the July 20s. And the big dog, yet again this week, 337,000 of the SEP 60s, 60s. I do believe that is part of that 1x3 we talked about a couple of months ago. We were wondering, is this kind of the return of some of the old ratio VIX upside action? And the answer so far has kind of been no. It was kind of those big trades. And that was really about it. So I guess we have to wait a little longer for the return of some of our beloved backspread action. Let's go out to the action today. Let's see what's lighting it up. Looks like, well, maybe I misspoke. Maybe we got a little bit going on today, because it looks like the big dog today is 83,000 of the NOV 45 calls. And that in and of itself is kind of interesting, listeners. But number 2, right behind it, we have 27,000 of the NOV 28. So could there be a NOV 28 45? I'm just looking really quickly to see if they went up. Yeah, they did go up. They did go up as a spread, listeners, around the same time. Initially, it was 25,000 versus 75,000. So it is 1x3. So you know what? I could have whispered it into existence, Mr. Rock Lobster. Just the fact that I said we haven't seen any in a while, and here we go. Good old 1x3. NOV 2845, 25,000 by 75,000. You like that one, listeners? Intriguing stuff. Looks like they did it for around a 40-cent debit. So not cheap, but then again, cheaper than if they bought the 28s straight up for around $1.50. So intriguing. Here we go. Here I am, just bemoaning the lack of some ratio upside, and the VIX gods smile upon me. Number 3, 27,000 of the July 20s. Number 4, 20,000 of the OC 40s. And 20,000 as well of the August 24th. Maybe I can whisper some other things into existence. How about, $1 billion worth of just gold bullion on my desk right next to me? Oh, alas, that didn't come to pass, listeners. But again, the show is young. We shall see. Thursday, 1.25 million contracts on the tape. So yesterday, obviously, the banger day of the session. People have been kind of wondering if this market's a little top heavy, a little overbought. So a bit of a sell-off day. It's going to always spur some action. And we did see some action yesterday. Again, the big dog yesterday, ironically, similar size to today, 83,409 of the OC 45s, but no ratio action yesterday, just a lot of heavy contract volume. 69,000 for number 2 of the July 14 puts, so there's some puts on the old radar. Number 3, 62,000 of the July 18s. Number 4, 62,000 of the July 16 puts. And rounding out the top 5 yesterday, 59,000 of the AUG 25s. It goes without saying that was the busiest day of the week. A Wednesday, 580,000 was the volume. 30,000 was the big dog that was the DEES 45s. Number 2, 25,000 of the AUG 13 puts. Number 3, 23,000 of the July 18 calls. Number 4, 22,000 of the SEP 15 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on Wednesday, 19,000 of the August 16 puts. Tuesday obviously closed, and Monday was that weird stub session. Only about 213,000 contracts on the tape on a pretty light Monday. The big dog, such as it was, 15,000 of the July 13 puts. A lot of put action on Monday, followed by 14,000 of the July 12 puts, 11,000 of the July 23 calls, 10,000 of the July 16 calls, and rounding out the top 5 on a pretty anemic half session on Monday, 9,100 of the July 20 calls. Mr. Rock Lobster, what are your thoughts on the volume that we did see this week, including a big day on Thursday, and also clearly the fact that I have now manifested powers to speak things into fruition, like the ratio vertical today, sir?
So are you claiming some sort of some sort of God, small g like power to invoke
yes.
Ratio call spreads?
I'm the guy from Groundhog Day. God, small g. Yes, that's me. I can now, my only power is to invoke ratio call spreads and VIX. It's kind of a lame power. I'd be pretty weak on the X-Men if I was to be part of that team. But yeah, intriguing. I guess in terms of powers go, there are worse things.
There are. I'm trying to think of how they're going to work you into the plot line of a X-Men thing. You know, when there's some kind of there's some kind of maniac trying to subvert the stock market, and we're going to bring in, what would your handle be, like Vixer, something like?
Oh, Vixer. I don't know. SIBO might try to slap a trademark injunction on me if I went out with Vixer.
Exactly.
The Volinator.
You know, and of course, not really using their heads, seeing is that 100 million people are going to see that.
Oh
movie.
Yeah, I'm selling contracts for them left, right, and central.
Vixer.
Yes.
That almost is as funny as the when they had that movie Quicksilver.
Oh yeah, the Kevin Bacon gem. Yes.
Dude, that is a classic. So that's my old Pecos floor, right? And they didn't even charge the movie company anything for using the floor. So they filmed all that stuff on the floor. They didn't charge them anything for the floor. Anyway,
might be the best end to a movie ever, where he just walks into the crowd on, I think it was earnings day, on a visitor's badge and just trades size. I love it. I love everything about that.
Yes, on the on the little sticky paper thing they gave him.
Yep.
Yes. Not quite how it works, but wasn't really working for the narrative that they have.
I'm still waiting for my call from Marvel Studios when they need the Volinator. The movie will be called Rise of the Volinator, just to avoid trampling on any existing trademarks. And, Galactus is coming to devour the world, and the only thing that could stop him is some ratio VIX upside. And luckily, there I am. Bam. Save the day, as usual.
So that it was funny. Like a bunch of those guys that were in the movie, I knew that was sort of funny. It was funny too, is they picked all the guys that were really the big personalities. Every floor has your big personality, but the Pecos floor was so small. Some guys really stood out, but it was bringing back memories. Anyway, about 1 billion years ago, far, far, far from the shores of Maine for sure. So. 1x2. So you should start seeing this 1x2 action again. Like we said, VIX getting back to 13. All of a sudden, people want to start playing again. And the same thing with anything with vol. It's not. It's just when. Vol's going to pop. It goes to 13. It's going to pop. It just happens because the market moves. I just try not to go broke in the meantime with a strategy. So you see all those 1x2. So the fact that you can invoke means maybe you have some rough idea of how the stock market thing works.
I'm getting a handle on this thing after all these years here, Serbia. I thought after we saw the last one for size, I thought that was kind of it. Opening flag, opening the floodgates. Here we go. And yet we haven't seen him really until today. So I guess the Volinator was busy doing other things, but now he has returned. He's ready. He's ready for action, Mr. Rock Lobster. It is the rise of the Volinator. As we keep on rolling here. You know what else was rising? Not so much now, so I'm sure our buddy on the show last week, the once in future and now present Dr. VIX, will have a bit of a frowny face because his beloved SVIX, like 60% of his holdings now, it has the temerity to actually go down. Week over week, went down a point. 27.25 right now, so one of the few weeks in the last couple of months where we said it was not setting a new all-time high. Still obviously up size. Well, we got excited when it hit 17. In fact, a lot of our listeners were overwriting. They've written in saying how they overwrite calls on the 17, 18, 19, 20 strike, and we're lamenting it now. But hey, you're making money at the end of the day, so it's still better than losing. But yes, I could see how you're upset. You left a little bit of cash on the table. So maybe you're getting some of that opportunity back today. We're dropping down a point. Not so much in terms of paper out there today, only 1,400 contracts. But again, if you look at it in light of the ADV, it looks a little better because the ADV is about 2,000 contracts a day right now. That's ticked up about 250 contracts since our last show, so maybe they're doing something right out there. A little bit more paper. We've all been kind of lamenting collectively here on the show the lack of paper out here in SVIX, so maybe starting to hit 2,000 contracts a day. Maybe we'll start seeing, dare I say it, a weekly out here in SVIX. And hey, we all can start slinging a little bit more SVIX out there. Right now, in terms of size positions, it is the July 8 puts, 2,208 of those bad boys ruling the roost out there in SVIX right now. I got a feeling the 8 put's not going to come into play, but hey, we've seen crazier things. That'd be a heck of a move from 27 down to 8 by July expiration. Right behind it, we have 2,100 of the AUG 9 puts. So once again, we were talking about those on the show recently, on the show last week, I do believe, how someone had blasted away those 2,000. And it was an intriguing trade. I think they got a decent level for them. And we were just kind of all intrigued by the idea, intrigued by how much they got for them. Just an intriguing idea. I think a lot of people would sell those AUG 9 puts and take delivery of SVIX at 9. Intriguing stuff. 1,100 of the July 27 puts for number 3 and 1,100 for number 4 of the SEP 35s. And let's just do a top 5 because why not? 1,000 of the July 25 puts. That's your top 5 out there in SVIX. Mr. Rock Lobster, I know the Mr. Dr. Vix loves himself some SVIX. Have you been converted to the cult of SVIX since last we chatted, sir?
I have. I'm just putting out a new limit here. Hold on for 1 second. I do like the product. I think it's fun. It has been trading a little more, and it's funny because yesterday I was talking to my students about it, and that is a great buy the dip product. We have vol spikes, and then like all of a sudden that product's going to fly. It either flies back up, or it goes, the way of Palookaville. So it's kind of a fun product once vol starts moving. When vol's not moving at all, it just kind of sits there. So you could trade the options around the underlying. I just caution everybody, just like in the old days when there is a huge spike in volatility, SVIX gets annihilated. I'm just like, so you just be prepared. Be prepared for that. As what I would say on that one. So that's why I say it's better. I kind of like leaning into it on the dip, as opposed to, another way. I think it works pretty well that way.
What, you haven't put 60% of your holdings in SVIX underlying, sir? What's wrong with you?
I have to say I have not. But I don't know if I consider it, but I think it's fun to to have it there as a potential trade. So, but it's more like a trade, and if you put it into a retirement account, it probably does like well. There's just going to be times where it's going to be just ugly. So sometimes you buy it and you buy a put, and then you kind of roll the put when the market gets ugly. There's like stuff you can do with it. There's definitely things that you can do with it to trade it, so you don't go running away. And I used to tell students, like when SVXY before Volmageddon's, like you don't buy that thing without a put, like because it's just. And anyway, it turned out to be prophetic, but you didn't make any money, but at least you didn't get totally annihilated because the put stopped you out on a 90% loss. But anyway, that's sort of, where that stands with those. But I think it's a fun product to trade. You just have to understand how it responds to how vol moves. So then, in the courses we teach at Option Pit, I were like, okay, is you trade vol for either shock or decay. This was my big epiphany about 7 or 8 years ago. So and it's a lot easier to trade it once you make those distinctions. So if you're going to trade it for shock, that means you're really expecting VIX to move, to really pull those futures. If you trade it for decay, you're just, okay, you feel like there is some sort of, so Russell's trade on SVIX normally, like a long term, is like, okay, this decay at the is going to be pretty steady most of the time. Those are going to be periods of volatility, but the decay, can drive the value. I mean, that product's probably up 100% this year. It's got to be close to that from the lows. Let me see here, SVIX. It is, since the start of the year.
It's up 83% from 83%. The start of the year.
Not as good as Facebook or Nvidia, but
no. Because they're not doing
pretty good.
They're not generating the inverse ratio with AI. If they were doing that, then the thing would be up
actually,
10x.
From the bottom in the March, when everything was ugly in March, remember the world was going to collapse and it was got to $12.50. That was $12.50, and now it's $27. You would have been up $2.50 in about 5 days. And by then it would have been, you could have run a stop on that thing for there and just let it roll. But what an awesome purchase that was. So I could see why. Now hold it. Do we just call him the present Dr. VIX? Doesn't he have his diploma now?
He does. That's why he's the present. So yeah, he was the once in future, and now he is indeed the present.
I saw him banding it about on Twitter, and I go, oh, we better straighten our act out now that he's big time.
He's been talking about getting that paper for the decade, so at least he finally
been doing this show.
Finally has it. It finally has it in his hot little hand. Speaking of interesting purchases,
we need a new gag for him. If we can't torture him about being Professor VIX, we need something else.
We'll come up with something fun for him. Speaking of fun purchases, it looks like somebody took your advice, liking a little bit of the decay, because the big trade in SVIX today, someone bought 500 of the July 28s for 90 cents, sir. You like those? Those get on your VIX radar. So we're hanging out at a 27 right now, pretty much even, listeners, so we need it to pop about a point and change for these bad boys. They paid 90 cents, so they need to pop a wee bit. I don't know.
Yeah, so let's see here. I'm just trying to. I'm just running a just general decay. So right now, so that would decay at around 0.6% a day, something like that. The opposite direction, 0.6% per day up. So basically, SVIX is going to rally like 0.5% on decay alone per day. So you if you go out to July, those could easily be in the money just on the decay alone for those things. So it is a quite reasonable purchase. If VIX just stays flat, those things I think they could double without too much trouble.
So you got a new trade for your newsletter. July 28th for 90 cents.
It's hard not to like that trade, but of course, if VIX goes, if we get any kind of, everybody got worried about the Fed's going to raise again. It's like, dude, go out and buy some food, and you tell me if the Fed is not going to keep raising. Like the cost of food is ridiculous. Definitely not keeping up with any kind of cost of living increases. So I still think the Fed will be raising, and interest rates have been higher in the past, and they'll probably be higher in the future. And I still think he's still lobbing the same softball at Congress in the White House. Guys, you got to stop spending if you don't want this inflation to go down. I wish he would just say it instead of just raising rates all the time and shaking his finger at them. But apparently that's all we got from Jay Powell.
That's how you defeat inflation, with massive spending packages. I'm not sure. You must have missed that chapter. It was a bonus chapter in the econ book, Mr. Rocklot. If you flood the inflation, it's like a fire.
$1 trillion.
If you overwhelm the fire with explosions, then you could put it out. And so, same thing with inflation. If you overwhelm it with even more aggressive spending, hey, you can put it out as well. That's the bonus. You may have missed that one as well, listeners, in your economics textbook. As we keep on rolling, SVIX, like we said, SVIX lighting it up out here this week. Rock Lobster, I should say, the once in future, now present Dr. VIX. Probably not as happy as he has been, but still looking pretty good. If those calls are going to pay off, SVIX has to set a new all-time high. The all-time high right now is 28.25. We'll see if it can get back there. UVIX 470, up about 0.3 of a point. Putting some paper up today, 7,500 contracts. The ADV is about 9,000. That's coming in about 1,000. So the ADV kind of moving in the wrong direction. And then we got our old friend UVXY actually managing to be up on the week. It was at about 1920 as of a few minutes ago. I'm sure if I re-rack that might be down a little bit now, but it's up about 0.8 of a point from where it was this time last week. It actually did get back into the low 20s again. So for a little while there, when vol was popping, we had UVXY regaining some of its reverse split luster. So I'm sure the issuers were very excited to see that. They don't have to reverse split again tomorrow after all this madness. 59,000 contracts on the tape today. That's pretty much in line with the ADV, which is 122,000. That's moving in the wrong direction as well, down 20,000. Now, we did come off that truncated holiday week, so that's kind of gumming up some of these ADV numbers, listeners. But obviously, when they reverse split this thing, they're hoping that it kicks some of these numbers back into high gear. We'll have to wait and see if that materializes. Right now, the big position in UVXY, 28,000 of the 8 calls. These are all pretty much pre-split adjusted ones, so we'll have to wait for some more paper to come back in to really kind of usurp these. You got these Jan doubles out here as well, so all sorts of funky strikes out here as well. But Mr. Rock Lobster, what are your thoughts on UVIX and indeed our freshly reverse split friend UVXY? Have you been lured back to the dark side of UVXY post-reverse split, sir?
I have. I do own some. I do own some UVXY puts versus some SPY put flies that have kind of been, I want to say, dying on the vine. I had the chance to close some UVXY puts, but I'm like, no, I'll be making. So they're on their way back. They're on their way. They're almost back to even on that one side. So yes, I have been looking back again. Why they did they're not like 20 for 1? Again, we still shake our heads like, why do they do this? So like, just do it once and split it up, you know. But anyway, I think UVXY and both of them. UVXY is a little more liquid. But still, like, you know, it's not easy to move 50 contracts in UVXY right now. I mean, if you take the offer, you can, but it's still like it's never like a super liquid product, not like VIX's. So I just caution people, you know, it's not exactly all there, but it's pretty good. So yeah, I have been playing a little bit, and yeah, I own some July 21 18 puts, which at this point I had a what was my low? So not very long ago, I had a UVXY low of like 1650 by July expiration, and now my low is 18. So my 18 put trade is not looking like, again, because I'm not going to make any money on my SPY put flies, it looks like at this point. So yeah, unless we have like a radical repricing of VIX, probably by July expiration, 18 is the low. So that's $1.35 away. We need VIX to go below 13 now for my trade to really pay. So that's okay. I don't need much out of them. I only need to be able to sell my puts for $1.35. So I mean, it can get there. But it need a little help. So the puts that I own have to basically double. And I think that's probably again, a lot of trading the vol products on the downside is understanding what I call like the terminal price, how low they can go for a cycle, given where the futures are, unless you have an extreme move in VIX. So a lot of this trading these things is like kind of figuring out where everything's can go first. And then you sort of price your options around that. I find it a better way to trade them. I don't really use them for just like, you know, rote blank speculation. Cause, I found that's harder, to do. But anyway, yeah, I think both of those, they're not as liquid. I mean, VIX is still kind of king daddy of liquidity, but they are getting more liquid. The UVIX and SVIX are getting more, you know, the UVIX with SVIX is getting, you know, the liquidity is getting better. But again, yeah, these are when these products just start kind of going on these long slides, you know, where they go down $2, $3, $4. UVIX decay daily is like 17 cents a day. So we're almost back. We're near almost $1 a week again. So that's a lot. $1, like 80 cents a week is a lot on a product that's $19.42. So, it's kind of in that yucky mode again.
Just proving my theory that they just like to reverse split every month and a half. That they just love it.
So yeah, are they going to let it trade to 2 again? Like, oh my gosh! But And I think that's why, I think people, they just buy puts and they sit on. They say, screw it, But
hard to argue with that approach, sir, given their propensity for reverse splitting on a seemingly monthly basis out there. And if this keeps up, we'll be talking about reverse split and these products again very soon, listeners. What did just reverse split? So it's probably gotten back on your radar as a result, listeners. It's good old VXX, the product. This time a year ago, we were saying this is a piece of garbage. Barclays screwed the pooch. We're done with it. I was saying that myself. So you'd be forgiven for saying it yourselves out there as well, listeners. But of course, now the reverse split is back in. Barclays has at least pledged its fealty to the product for the time being. So obviously keep one eye on them while you're trading this thing. But intriguing stuff nonetheless, because it's starting to do what it's supposed to do again. This week, maybe all you put buyers out there, maybe not super excited. 25.70 right now, up nearly a full point, about 0.9 of a point. So it can go up. It's a rare phenomenon, but it can go up out there, listeners. Going up this week. Starting to see some numbers out there again as well. 56,000 contracts on the tape today. The ADV, 67,000, up about 1,000 contracts. So moving in the right direction out there. In terms of size positions, what is the big dog out there in VXX right now? It's 21,000 of the July 40s, followed by 17,000 of the AUG 22 puts. So interesting that a call is the top position out there in VXX. Again, you don't see a lot of people swinging for the upside using VXX. We've had this discussion on the show many times. Usually you go VIX proper or some other products out there. Again, it could be an overwrite, but we've seen crazier things. And obviously it can rally. It did happen this week. It's just not the typical use case for VXX. Number 3, we have 10,000, almost 11,000 of the July 25 puts. So those are the types of trades I expect when I look at the top positions out here. Speaking of top trades, right now the big dog today are 6,500 of the July 26 puts expiring today. What's going on out here? Interesting. It looks like they're buying them for 22 cents. Hard to tell if they're opening or not because there is a lot of OI on this strike. They could be buying back to close. They bought some of the early kind, about 2,000 of them, through the offer. So they were pretty aggressive on these. So it could be buying to close. It's hard to tell. That's usually something you might be doing if you're just, you don't care. If you're sitting on a bunch of house money, you don't care where you buy these things back, then you could live through the offer. But it is intriguing. These are going the way of the dodo today, buying these bad boys back. Either way, intriguing stuff, or maybe you're just rolling the dice. These are looking pretty good right now. If you paid 22 to 25 cents, you're up money a little bit, but some. So intriguing stuff. Mr. Rock Lobster, is that you out there buying about 6,000 of these July 26 puts expiring today in VXX, sir? And what else is catching your eye out there?
Well, again, VXX, same. I mean, it's the same movie here. What I did see is, like, the biggest thing was like the collapse in vol from yesterday to today. So I own some 24.5 puts expiring next week, and they closed 31 cents yesterday. I remember VXX had a $4 range, and I think we were down $1 today VXX, and those puts were only up like 6 cents. So the one thing about trading those products is they can annihilate the volatility quite drastically. And so anyway, just be mindful of that when you're trading those products, trading the puts and stuff like that. So I haven't seen a ton of vol paper today, mostly because it's one of those days where if you're trading, you know that today is the day they're going to crush the vol. So why buy anything? My puts were a remnant of a strangle because I sold all the calls yesterday in our easy trade button service. So I had the puts for a credit, so I might as well I was just leaning on them. But you're not buying if you're buying any vol product premium today, you're just running into a buzzsaw of just everything getting smoked. So I don't think it's the best day to buy it, that kind of stuff, to be quite honest. So this is a day of just closing and sort of sitting on the sidelines when it comes to vol products.
Speaking of closing, it's almost time to close out the show. We've been gassing on about the Volinator and all this other fun out here, but it is time for a little bit of the old crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
Our audience, Frank, says he's looking forward to the Volinator movie. Yeah, me too. He says as a pro member, he wants a ticket to the red carpet premiere. Tell you what, if they do decide to include Volinator in the next upcoming X-Men movie, or perhaps an early spin-off or prequel film, all of our pro members will get tickets. I think that's the least I could do, Mr. Rocklops, don't you think? You all get tickets to the red carpet premiere of the Volinator movie. You think that's a good peace offering to our audience, sir?
I think it is. That probably will be the one and only movie premiere I ever go to. So yes, I think that'd be nice. I think your listeners would be happy. Yes,
the rise of the Volinator coming to a multiplex near you in, let's say, I don't know, 2026. We still have to write the darn thing. In terms of what's going on out there right now in the crystal ball, of course, the portion of the show where we attempt to wrestle with the vol gods, see what they have in store for us. Really quickly, let's pay off what you folks had in store for us as well. In terms of our fun holiday-themed question of the week, this week we asked you, in the spirit of the season, what is your favorite food to eat on the 4th of July? Hot dogs, hamburgers, corn on the cob, or apple pie? And hamburgers running away with it. It just closed a few minutes ago. 48.7% of you choosing hamburgers. Like yourself a good burger. I like a good cookout on the 4th of July. And maybe I might have a second thing would be a burger. But the first thing I'm reaching for in any sort of 4th of July cookout, it's going to be a hot dog. That came in second, 35.9%. Apple pie, third, 10.3%. Bringing up the rear, no love for corn on the cob, 5.1%. Maybe if I had put elote, maybe that would have been sexier for you folks out there. Speaking of which, we had a heated debate on boot camp this week related to this poll about whether ketchup is an acceptable condiment on a hot dog. Thankfully, you folks, you fine, intelligent, tasteful folks out there, 65.1% of you agreeing with me, saying yes, it is an acceptable condiment for a hot dog. Only 34.9% of you agreeing with the black-headed one and saying no. Let's keep on rolling out here. Let's go to the crystal ball for this week. Last week on the show, it was myself, it was the Rock Lobster, and it was the once future and present Dr. VIX. He gets the award for being the closest, but none of us are within the margin of victory. VIX right around a 14.5 right now to end the show. He was at a 13.31. He was playing his best meatball palindromic nonsense. No joy there. Andrew was at a 12.15. I remember I wanted to be a little bit closer to that, but I was nice, so I bumped myself up to 12.31 to give the Rock Lobster. I was going to go 12.21 to be similarly palindromic, but it did not work out that way. It doesn't matter because VIX at a 14.5. All of us losing. Looking at some of our pro members' guesses, and I don't see any 14 handles here. So no winners there. Our producers will go through the full list, listeners, and see if there are any winner chicken dinners. That means, Mr. Rock Lobster, you get the joy of going first. What are you feeling for this time next week, sir?
I'm gonna say, I was trying to think of another good something happening in the 13 handle. I can't really remember any good dates in the 13 handle. So I'm going to go Mayflower. I'm going, what is it? When did Christopher Columbus? 14? No, that's too high.
I was going to say Mayflower. You're going to go on the 16s?
Yeah,
16 handle?
16 now. I'm losing my mind. I'm 1395, but I can't think of anything historically that happened great at 1395. Probably the Black Death. So I don't know if I want.
That's pretty close. I think that was like 1347 or something like that. So you're within the ballpark.
I don't want to evoke the Black Death.
In fact, you know what? You have inspired. I was thinking about something in the mid 13 handles anyway. So why don't I do that? I'll go 1347 Black Death inspired for. There we go.
We have titled the show.
We have already established on the show that I have the power to speak things into reality. So that's maybe a terrifying thing. So tell you what, just for the sake of humanity, I'm going to lower. I'm going to say 13.25. So there we go. No Black Death inference there. We don't need that in the world. We've already had enough pandemics. We're good. All right, Mr. Rock Lobster. I love when I move my vol prognostication just to keep the world safe. And that's the kind of guy I am, Mr. Rock Lobster. But before we get on out of here, if folks want to see what kind of guy you are, learn about some of your vol musings, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
Yes, 888-TRADE-01. Like all the products that I teach and trade, volatility is a huge component. Because it's probably a little more sustainable way to trade options. But that said, 88trade01, 888trade01, and also at Money Map Press, my weekly profit cycle, strictly SPY and VIX. And at Option Pit, if you heard this show and you want to try any of our products, which are quite reasonable, and generally they pay for themselves, so you would be and say, hey, Ted or Andrew, 10% off, and they will give it to you if you say you heard the show.
I just looked it up while you were talking. On the button, sir. 1347, the year the Black Death started. Come on. These facts just swirling in my brain.
Impressive history right there.
I could walk on to Jeopardy tomorrow and wreck all of those fools. So let's do it. After I'm done writing the Volinator film, I will go on to Jeopardy and show them how it's done. Unfortunately, listeners, I have no more time to show you anything on the on-demand side for this week. That will conclude our broadcast week for all of our on-demand listeners. Thank you for joining us. Hope you have a safe, fun, and enjoyable weekend. Join us again on Monday. I'll be back in the Chicago studio for all of the OB fun. Of course, for the rest of you on the pro side, stay tuned. I'll be back in a little bit, storms notwithstanding, with the Rock Lobster to hold court on some fun options oddities. You want to join the party? Only one place to go. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more about all that fun. Then, of course, we'll be back again next week on another episode of Volatility Views. Stay safe out there, everybody.
Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.